There are consequences when a nation forgets God. We'll spend the next hour discussing that.
The KGB still runs Russia. It's more powerful in Russia than it ever was before. So it is infiltrating our system. It's backing Black Lives Matter. It's backing other radical groups in America. So yeah, it's definitely still a threat.
This is Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell. This hour, Jan meets with New Zealand author, speaker, and political activist Trevor Loudon. Recently, Trevor produced the video documentary The Enemies Within. Domestic enemies can be more dangerous than those who threaten us from afar. Trevor Loudon's here to discuss with Jan the enemies who've infiltrated our nation. To get the conversation started, here is Jan Markell.
And welcome to the program. We look at news, views, truths from a decidedly biblical perspective. And some of you may remember that a couple of years ago I featured Curtis Bowers on air. We did a 2-week special on his production called Agenda. And quite frankly, we had overwhelming response. And I've recently been apprised of an equally gripping DVD. It's titled Enemies Within. It's by Trevor Loudon. Trevor's from New Zealand, and he's going to join me for the hour to discuss the communist infiltration into our government. He also emphasizes, and I find this to be very significant, it's a red-green alliance, a sort of a double whammy of communists and Islamists who have penetrated our government. And obviously their goal is not anything good for America, for her future, for your kids' and grandkids' future. So I hope that you'll really listen up. And Trevor Loudon, welcome to the program.
It's great to be on, Jen. Thanks for having me.
Trevor, you're from New Zealand. Why do you care? I mean, you make a fantastic film. You obviously poured time, money, effort into this. You're not even from America. Why the burden here?
Well, there is a debt. My country was saved from invasion during World War II by the Japanese army, only because of the huge sacrifice of, your fathers and grandfathers and uncles at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. So we feel very grateful for that. But really it's also because, the U.S. Constitution is the guiding light for anyone who loves liberty. And if the U.S. Constitution is allowed to die, the light of liberty will go out across the planet, not just in America, but every free country of the world. Because, the world is full of bad guys, from Moscow and Beijing and Havana and Tehran and the radical Islamic movement. And if America isn't leading the world, those people will take over. And that's not a kind of world I want to leave to my children.
You state in this film, there's kind of a little bit of a deception going on. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it took away the image of the enemy, and that's how they have infiltrated. So apparently there's kind of a delusion that the Soviet Union, no longer Russia, whatever you want to call it, the whole communist world has sort of diminished in significance. So you say that's when they really made inroads.
Yeah, well, look, 2 weeks ago, Vladimir Putin was in Sochi, Russia, where he headlined a convention, a 50,000-strong convention of communist youth from all over the world. And that was there to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. And Vladimir Putin specifically intervened to organize that venue for the Russian communist youth. You've got to understand right now that Russia is backing the Taliban in Afghanistan. Russia is backing ISIS. Russia is backing Hamas and Al-Qaeda. Russia is still backing Cuba and Venezuela, all the old communist bloc countries. And it's still an informal alliance through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization with Communist China. So Russia is not our friend, and Russia now has 3 times more nuclear weapons than the United States at minimum, and double the number of soldiers under arms. So it's very naive to think that because they don't talk about communism so much these days, that they're still not committed to that goal. The KGB still runs Russia. It's more powerful in Russia than it ever was before. So it is infiltrating our system. It's backing Black Lives Matter. It's backing other radical groups in America. So, yeah, it's definitely still a threat.
I want to play what I think this might be a trailer that you have, and it presents in just about 2 minutes and 25 seconds, kind of what this film is all about, and then I'll tell folks how they can get it.
Trevor Loudon is a guy from New Zealand. He's a dad who is concerned about the world.
I'm an activist, author, and researcher from Christchurch, New Zealand.
He is the official commie hunter.
For 5 years, I've been travelling to the United States to expose the greatest act of betrayal in modern history.
That old school communism that you saw with the USSR, it's not dead, it's alive and well, and it's not just in North Korea.
The United States, a country founded on the very principles of liberty and freedom, whose soldiers have shed blood for more than 200 years to protect, is now facing the most dangerous enemy it has ever seen, the enemy within.
I've been following your stuff for a long time, and it's overwhelming.
Why is America slowly sinking into poverty, despair, and socialism? Why is the American economy teetering on the brink of collapse? Why are the allies of the United States slowly backing away as its enemies become more brazen? Is this all an accident, perhaps a coincidence, or just inevitable decline? Or has this been a deliberately engineered attack on the greatest nation the world has ever seen?
We actually have bad actors who have penetrated our system, basically making decisions the way Iran and North Korea and China and Russia would like us to make decisions.
So basically Trojan horses inside the infrastructure.
Yeah, an insider threat.
America has enemies operating in the highest levels of the federal government who are deliberately working to bring the nation to its knees.
If you look at every policy that the Obama administration has instituted, it has an older brother living in Venezuela.
The enemies within names names and pulls no punches. It exposes exactly how hardcore anti-American activists have penetrated the highest branches of the US government and are working together to destroy the Constitution and finally extinguish the American dream.
We're seeing the disintegration of a noble world order.
If America falls, every Western country goes down.
If America is weakened, our allies are weakened. And then we talk about dominoes.
Every free nation will fall alongside her.
Understand what this is really about.
We've never been in more danger from these powers.
The enemies within will expose the names, reveal the faces, and show you what the mainstream media won't allow you to see.
The enemy is within because they are in our government.
You're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have on the line Trevor Loudon, writer-producer of a DVD I've viewed very recently called Enemies Within. Here's how you get it. First of all, we're not carrying it, but you can get it at enemieswithinmovie.com, enemieswithinmovie.com. You have to order it online. And Trevor, as I was listening to that clip, something came to my mind, and that is some 8-9 years ago, probably 9-10 years ago now, Barack Obama promised the transformation of America. Now, I think he kind of opened the door to a lot of what you're revealing here. I mean, he's himself committed Marxist. But now we have a new sheriff in town, as they keep saying. Do you see perhaps a greater pushback against the enemies of within with Barack Obama out of the picture, though he's still organizing for action with his little group behind the scenes?
Yeah, look, there's still a war going on right now because there are a whole bunch of Obama holdovers still in the administration. You really have two presidents in the United States right now. You have Donald Trump and Barack Obama. And it hasn't been decided yet who is in complete control. Mm-hmm. So the election of Donald Trump was a huge victory, for our side in a way, for freedom, because not so much about Trump himself, but because of the fact that Hillary Clinton would have effectively finished Obama's job for him. Mm-hmm. And I want to say two things that she would have done that she promised to do within the 100 days of taking office. The first one, she was going to implement UN Resolution 1618, which she helped to design and implement through the State Department. It's an operation of the Organization of Islamic Conference, the largest Muslim Brotherhood front group in the world. And that resolution would have technically made it illegal to criticize Islam in this country. It would have made it a felony. So that was one thing. The other thing she was promised to do within 100 days of taking office was to legalize every illegal immigrant in the country and give them citizenship and voting rights. Now, people need to understand the significance of this. Now, Mitt Romney lost his election by 2.5 million votes. Donald Trump won by about 200,000 votes. They're very slim margins, right? Now, there are between 10 and 30 million illegals in the country right now. We know that they will vote approximately 80% at least for the Democratic Party. That would mean between 10 and 24 million new votes for the Democratic Party. That would have essentially created a one-party state in America. Mm-hmm. It could never be overturned. And my argument is that even if you're a Democrat, do you really want to live in the country where one party rules forever? Because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it's my contention in the movie, and I'm not giving the Republicans a pass on this at all. There are a lot of problems in the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party since 1994 has effectively been completely taken over at the top level by Marxists. And Barack Obama was the crowning glory, and he filled the party with communists. He filled the administration with communists, and that is the problem that Donald Trump is now dealing with.
You name some allies. Now, first of all, let me back up a little bit. You say that what was once Marxist and Leninist, they now just call themselves progressive. You say that most communists say they are socialists. You spend a good amount of time talking about the Democratic Socialists, which is what Bernie Sanders is, and I want to get to Sanders here in a minute. And then you talk about there are certain allies of the Democratic Socialists of America, and you name them. And I'm just going to go down on a list of names that you name. In other words, the names I'm about to name, you name, and let's just say in simple terms, these folks are sympathetic, to say the least, to communism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it. You name Representatives Jerry Nadler, Maxine Waters, Alan Grayson, Florida, John Lewis, Barbara Mikulski, who's since stepped down, retired, Debbie Stabenow, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, we'll get there in a moment. You name other names that are, again, very friendly to the whole Marxist message. Patty Murray, Washington, Al Franken, Minnesota, Claire McCaskill, Keith Ellison, Muslim. Again, I'm naming a lot from Minnesota. Amy Klobuchar, Luis Gutierrez. You even name Mark Dayton, the governor of Minnesota. You spend a fair amount of time talking about Representative Andrew Carson, another Muslim. And you also consider John Conyers of Michigan to be one of the most troubling in office with communist ties. Now, a couple of these names, perhaps more than a couple, I've named as I speak, are embroiled in some scandals, and whether or not they remain in office is questionable. We don't know at this point. All I'm saying is you're naming the names of some people, and as I just read some of those names, some of my listeners are shocked.
Well, they should be, and it goes further than that. I maintain currently in Congress there are about 100 members of the United States House of Representatives and about 20, probably more close to 25 senators who are so enmeshed in neo-communism or Muslim Brotherhood front groups, or in many cases both, that they couldn't pass a basic FBI background check to drive a school bus. They couldn't sell you stamps at the post office, but they're serving on the Homeland Security Committee, the Armed Services Committee, even the Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives. And so these people are trashing your country every day. But the horrible thing is, there are no security background checks in Congress, none whatsoever. So you have people serving in there that wouldn't be allowed to clean the toilets at any military base in your country, yet they're serving on the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee, and they are working with enemy nations like the Cubans and the Chinese and the Russians to bring this country to its knees. And I think we make a good case for that in the movie.
Yep, you do. Again, folks, find it at enemieswithinmovie.com, enemieswithinmovie.com. I want to just spend a minute here on Bernie Sanders. He certainly, I think, without some shenanigans going on in the Democrat Party, he probably could have even be president of the United States.
Presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders claims to be a democratic socialist who wants America to be more like Sweden, Denmark, and Norway.
He wants America to look more like Scandinavia.
That's right. And what's wrong with that?
But is honest Bernie telling you the truth? In 2014, Sanders endorsed longtime Communist Party supporter Chuy Garcia's bid for the Chicago mayoralty. Sanders spoke alongside Scott Marshall, a leader of the Chicago Communist Party. In the early 1960s, Bernie Sanders studied at the University of Chicago. There he joined the Marxist Young People's Socialist League and worked for the Communist Party-led Packing House Workers' Union. In 1963, Sanders travelled to Israel as a guest of the pro-Soviet Hashomer Hitzat youth organization. Sanders worked on the Sha'ar Hamakim kibbutz, a pro-Stalin communal farm near Haifa. The kibbutz's co-founder, Aharon Cohen, had been jailed in 1958 for spying against Israel for the Soviet Union. By 1972, Sanders had moved to Vermont, where he became active in the far-left Liberty Union Party. In 1980, Sanders backed the presidential campaign of Andrew Pulley, a leader of the pro-Cuba Socialist Workers' Party. In 1985, while serving as mayor of Burlington, Vermont, Bernie Sanders celebrated the 6th anniversary of the pro-Soviet Sandinista takeover of Nicaragua.
Trevor Loudon, I think here's what's stunning. I think here's what's really grabbed my attention at the end of the campaign season almost a year ago. Two committed, well, I'm going to have to say it, Democratic, Socialist, Communist, Marxist, whatever. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders came very, very close to winning. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime.
Well, I know, because, Americans live in the freest, richest country in the world, but that breeds a little bit of naivety and a little bit of complacency. And most Americans have a real problem understanding the evil side of politics, and especially when it comes to your internal politics. Hillary Clinton is a committed Marxist.
That's right.
Bernie Sanders is a committed Marxist. He's just a little bit more open about it than Hillary. So you had two Marxists competing amongst themselves for the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party. And one of them came within a whisker of becoming your president. That would have made two Marxist presidents in a row, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And if you see the damage that Barack Obama did to your military, to your race relations, to your economy, to your education system, do you think America could have survived, 8 years of Hillary Clinton?
No, and conservatives and Christians in America knew that and were pretty troubled as we led up to the election back in 2016. Here's where I want to go. I'm going to take a short time out here. When I come back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the policies that are trying to be implemented by these folks, from the $15 minimum wage. That's part of their plan, folks. Stopping the Keystone Pipeline was a part of their plan. Sequestration, normalizing relations with Cuba, arms limitation, all sorts of things are a part of the leftist plan. And we're going to talk about that and much more. I have on the line Trevor Loudon. He is a writer, producer of the film Enemies Within. Find it at enemieswithinmovie.com. We're not carrying it at this time. And if you saw the video agenda, this parallels a lot of what was spoken, but this one is totally gripping, totally captivating, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you really want to understand just how did America go from the greatest nation on God's green earth, still is, by the way, but there are those trying to take her down so that we become just another third world country under a communist flag. I'm back in a couple of minutes. Don't go away.
Please stay with us. There's more to come from the producer of The Enemies Within, Trevor Loudon, in just a moment. We know you're enjoying today's discussion. You can order a digital recording of this broadcast when you phone 763-559-4444. Every weekend, this ministry addresses how current events around the globe are seen through the lens of Scripture. Your continued financial and prayerful support makes this outreach possible. Thank you. You can learn more about Understanding the Times Radio when you visit our website, olivetreeviews.org. You can become our financial partner when you mail your tax-deductible gifts to Olive Tree Ministries, Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota, 55311. Jen's conversation continues with Trevor Loudon right after this.
Understanding the Times 2018 is almost sold out now. Why don't you consider getting a group together to live stream the event at your computer or perhaps put it on a big screen? There is no cost or registration involved for streaming. Our speakers include Amir Sarfati, Pastor Jack Hibbs, Pastor Billy Crone, Pastor J.D. Farag, and Eric Barger. We will help you understand that nothing is falling apart. In fact, things are all falling together. Events that could be interpreted as chaotic and dark are really a herald of His return. Will also help you contend for the faith. Fellowship with like-minded is essential for spiritual health and to stay optimistic and looking up. Our event and live streaming is Saturday, September 29th, but you will be able to access the archived programming following that event. I promise our speakers and their topics will keep you focused on the bigger picture. God has everything under control. The King is coming right on time. He's never early, He's never late, and He wants none to be left behind. Just a quick add-on here, please, that reserved seats for handicapped and hearing impaired have not sold as we expected, so we're cutting those in half. That means that a few prime seats are now freed up. But you need to call the Brush Fire Agency, 888-3385-338, 888-3385-338. So some of those could still be available, but they will sell fast.
There was a coup inside the AFL-CIO. That was the year that Democratic Socialists of America, led by their member John Sweeney, took over that organisation. Sweeney became president and he removed the anti-communist clause from the AFL-CIO's constitution, and the Marxists came flooding in. So now every single major labour union in your country, SEIU, ASCME, NEA, United Auto Workers, you name it, they are now all run by Marxists, all completely communist controlled.
Self-described political activist and researcher from Christchurch, New Zealand, Trevor Loudon recently produced an insightful video, The Enemies Within. That documentary's theme serves as the centerpiece for Jan's discussion with Trevor today. Once again, Jan Markell.
You're not allowed to talk about communism, and if you do, you're called crazy and insane.
I've been following your stuff for a long time, and it's overwhelming.
If you look at every policy that the Obama administration has instituted, it has an older brother living in Venezuela.
The communists never revealed themselves to be communists.
Anybody who calls for comprehensive immigration reform, in my judgment, is trying to get the MVP award from ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
We actually have bad actors who have penetrated our system, basically making decisions the way Iran and North Korea and China and Russia would like us to make decisions.
Basically Trojan horses inside the infrastructure.
Yeah, an insider threat.
If we don't win this battle of ideas and information, the next battle is going to be something really bad.
If America is weakened, our allies are weakened. And then we talk about dominoes.
We've never been in more danger from these powers.
If the conservatives keep quiet, the communists win.
The enemy is within because they are in our government.
And welcome back. You're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm talking for the hour with Trevor Loudon, a writer-producer of the film I've just watched, Enemies Within. And Trevor, off air, you said to me that, and we just named some names a few minutes ago. My goodness, we named all sorts of, all part of the Democrat Party, but none of them have ever pushed back against you. How come?
Well, because what I say is true. Look, I spend a lot of time in archive because, what happens, every city has a few communists, and when they get old, they gather all their papers up for their lifetime, and it's got, all their minutes of meetings, their membership lists, their letterheads, etc., and they put them in little boxes and they donate them to the local library because they hope, being good atheists, that someday someone's going to come along and write a biography of their wonderful revolutionary life. Well, we go into those libraries and we photocopy and we photograph thousands of pages. And some of them are tremendously revealing. You know, they will have letters addressed to Barack Obama from communists when he was a young community organizer. They'll have membership lists of communist groups that contain Democratic congressmen and that kind of thing. So we have so much documentation that the left will dare not challenge us because they know that they would lose any court battle and the publicity would be hugely damaging to them.
In the last segment, I referenced a few policies that the left is, of course, promoting. Referenced the $15 minimum wage, which is part of the Marxist plan here, the sequestration, normalized relations with Cuba, arms limitation, etc. And then you spend a fair amount of time, and it's done very effectively, talking about the labor unions and that today they are completely controlled by the communists. And your film says that the union movement is not interested in the workers, it's only interested in communism. Do you think a lot of the workers are clueless about that?
Look, they're completely clueless. And you got to understand that in America, up till about 1995, American labor unions were actually led by anti-communists.
That's right.
Like Lane Kirkland and George Meany, and they were patriotic organizations. But in 1995, 1994, there was a coup inside the AFL-CIO. That was the year that Democratic Socialists of America, led by their member John Sweeney, took over that organization. Sweeney became president, and he removed the anti-communist clause from the AFL-CIO's constitution, and the Marxists came flooding in. So now every single major labor union in your country, SEIU, AFSCME, NEA, United Auto Workers, you name it, they are now all run by Marxists, all completely communist-controlled. But I would guarantee you that 99% of the dues-paying members of those organizations are completely clueless. They have no idea whatsoever. And so what has happened is you got to understand that if you control the labor movement in this country, you effectively control the Democratic Party, because the Democrats rely on labor union money and manpower to get them elected. So what happens is the communists set a policy, it might be normalization of relations with Cuba or a nuclear deal with Iran. They make it labor union policy, and the unions make it Democrat policy. So under Obama, you had about 30,000 communists in America controlling the unions who were dictating the policies of the Democratic Party, which were controlling the lives of 330 million Americans. That's how it works.
Another issue you spend time on briefly, but very effectively, and that's health care. I'm going to play a clip here in just a second about how they're trying to obtain single payer. Let's play clip number 3, and then, Trevor, let's just talk about it for a minute or two once we finish with this little clip. But this clip talks about the goal, of course, is the goal of communism everywhere is let the government decide who gets care and what kind of care they get. If they don't like you, folks, you won't get it.
Obama's Affordable Care Act passed in 2009. The bill passed against huge Republican and Tea Party opposition.
I intend to speak in support of defunding Obamacare until I am no longer able to stand.
And with a complete lack of transparency.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
You know, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really critical to get anything to pass.
Another key Obamacare architect was Harvard public health professor John Mcdonough.
I helped craft and pass Massachusetts health reform in 2006 and the Affordable Care Act in 2010.
John Mcdonough was a former chairman of Boston DSA. Gerald Friedman is an Amherst economics professor, DSA comrade, and big-time Obama fan.
I showed up the other day wearing my Obama shirt. Yeah, I love the man. And half my friends have jobs in the administration.
Professor Friedman loves Obamacare.
The thing I like most about it is it makes promises it can't realize. So in a couple of years, we're going to have an opportunity to really do something. Nothing's going to happen for a couple of years. They're going to give the exchanges a chance. They're going to try this thing, and then it's going to fail because it can't succeed. The White House doesn't even say it will succeed. The uninsured are going to go up. by the White House projections. I'm not making this up. This is what the White House says.
When Obamacare fails, what comes next?
We have to be ready because the other side is going to have a plan. And they are ready. We have to be ready with an effective plan, with a single-payer plan that's going to cut administrative waste and expand services.
Then will come the big leap into fully socialized healthcare.
To make the change we need the big leap. And those big leaps happen only occasionally. A few times in history have we had the type of mass movement that forces the powers that be to make a giant change. These are called moments of madness.
This will bring your healthcare under complete government control, as was intended all along.
You're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have on the line Trevor Loudon, producer of the film I have just watched, Enemies Within. Find it at enemieswithinmovie.com, enemieswithinmovie.com. Trevor, that's just a haunting clip I just played from your film. And this goes back to 2010 when it was implemented. I think passed officially 2010. But then the Republicans are not pushing back. I'm not sure we can stop this locomotive. Just not sure.
Yeah, well, this is a critical battle because Obamacare was designed by Democratic Socialists of America, the Marxist group. And the father of the single-payer healthcare movement was a man called Quentin Young, a doctor from Chicago. He was a Communist Party member. He then joined Democratic Socialists of America, and he was Barack Obama's personal physician and political mentor. He gave Obama the idea. So the plan for Obamacare was it would move towards socialized health care, it would fail, it would leave a whole bunch of people uninsured, and then the push would come for fully government-controlled health care. Unless President Trump comes up with a plan pretty quickly that moves back to free market solutions, that is what is going to happen, even under a Trump presidency, or certainly under the next Democratic administration. Look, I come from a country that has socialized health care, and you do not want it, because the argument's very simple, and you got to think about this for a minute. If you live in a free market healthcare system, and I know it's not free market here, but at least it still has elements of it, you are a customer, and customers are treated very, very well. If you're in a single-payer system, you are a liability because there is a fixed government budget for healthcare, but there are unlimited healthcare needs. Every operation you have is a drain on the system. So when you stop paying taxes and when you are no longer a contributing member of society, your health care is decided by accountants. You imagine if you're a 7-year-old girl who has leukemia, they can give you $100,000 worth of cancer treatment and save your life, and you may grow up and marry and have a family and pay taxes. Or you may be a 75-year-old man who has prostate cancer, and it's going to cost $100,000 to give you another 2 years of life. The budget is fixed. They have to ration.
Right.
What are they going to do? Are they going to treat the 7-year-old girl or the 75-year-old guy? Because they probably won't be able to treat both.
Well, I've tried to cover this topic on air over the last several years, and I appreciated the way it's covered in your film. It's a very, very ominous time. The Republican Party is not exactly helping the cause of getting rid of this behemoth that's staring us in the face. I want to look at a couple of more issues. You've already referenced, shall we say, the amnesty, because the left needs more voters, and we've kind of referenced that in the first segment. And there are, we don't know how many million immigrants, but you state in the film, it's game over for conservatives and Christians when it comes to voting if, in fact, we're not going to deal with some 20 and possibly even 50 million immigrants that are in this country. Again, these people are being controlled by the unions, committed to turning the USA into a communist nation. But again, this amnesty is a huge, huge issue.
Well, it is, and most Christians are told, this has infiltrated the churches.
Yes, it has, yes.
That Christians are told that we must welcome every illegal immigrant that comes into the country. And I don't even use the word immigrant. They are illegal aliens. There's a difference between an immigrant and an illegal alien. It's the same difference as between a guest in your house and a burglar. They're not the same thing. You know, if you look at the Old Testament, it's all about national security. You know, how many times did the Israelites get invaded? And how many times did they have to put up walls and defend themselves as best they could? They understood that you had to be able to protect your country and protect your families from those who would do you harm. Now, most of the illegals in this country are Christian people who just want a better life for themselves, and you can understand why they do it. But the problem is this: they will destroy the very country they have come to seek solace in, to come for a better life, because they will vote 80 to 85% for the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is now communist. You know, and there's no sugarcoating it. The Democratic Party is now communist. So you've got this unholy alliance going on because a lot of the Republicans are controlled by the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce wants an unlimited supply of cheap labor. So they want to keep the borders open. The Democrats want an unlimited supply of undocumented new voters. So they want to keep the borders open. So that is the problem. So Donald Trump got elected on a promise of no amnesty and closing the borders. We have to put every pressure on him to make sure those promises are kept, because otherwise there will be no America left.
That's right. Again, folks, get this film at enemieswithinmovie.com, enemieswithinmovie.com. We're not carrying it, so best not to call here, but get it online and enemieswithinmovie.com. I want to spend the time that we have left, Trevor, and it's a limited amount of time left. I want to spend it on the red-green axis, and let me just explain what that is to my audience, because that's really the aligning of communists in America and Muslims, because both parties have a couple of issues that they share. They hate America, they hate Israel, and so they've kind of yoked in their destructive efforts. And quite frankly, Trevor, Minnesota has an Islamic representative, and I named him earlier in the program, Keith Ellison. And your film spends a fair amount of time on Representative Carson from Indiana. If we have time, I'll play a clip about that. Talk to me for just a minute about this Red-Green Alliance, because as Frank Gaffney, and Gaffney has a big role in your film, says the FBI cannot do its job properly, and that is backed up by somebody else you have in this film. A good friend of mine, been on air a number of times, Phil Haney. Some of our organizations are prohibited from doing their job properly.
Yeah, well, Americans need to understand that the FBI and your intelligence agencies have been very, very penetrated by the Muslim Brotherhood and its sympathizers, and they've purged your training manuals of information that your agents can even use to come down on these people. And also, your Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives, the ranking Democrat is a complete Marxist by the name of John Conyers, who is a very active supporter of several Muslim Brotherhood front groups, and he has helped to shut down Republican efforts to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, as it is in Russia, as it is in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. The Muslim Brotherhood is the parent of Hamas, it's the parent of Al-Qaeda, and the parent of ISIS. But in America, it worked through several front organizations quite legally, and it works very closely with the communist movement as well. So both of them hate America. They are allies right now. Maybe they might fight each other over our corpses in the future, but that's a little late for us. Right now, they are working together to bring this country down, and Keith Ellison of Minnesota has his foot in both camps. He's a long-time Communist Party activist supporter, and he was very active with Muslim Brotherhood front groups. One of them even paid for his pilgrimage to Mecca. But, you know, he still swears on the Quran that he's going to uphold the U.S. Constitution. Well, you know, we got to understand that Muslims are allowed to lie to advance the cause.
That's right. That's right. Folks, if you aren't into purchasing the DVD, I encourage you to get a CD of this program. A lot of information being given out on this particular interview. You can call us for a CD. You can become a CD subscriber as well. That's very inexpensive. You can sign up for my print and e-newsletters. That's how I keep in touch with you. And remember, this program is always posted to my website Saturday morning. So if you're just catching half of this program today and you want to hear what you've been missing, just go to olivetreeviews.org, olivetreeviews.org, and go to radio, and you'll see we've got several years of archived programming there, new programming posted every Saturday morning. I'm coming back. We're going to wrap this up, and we have a short segment coming back, and I want to play a clip when we come back, and it heavily of Frank Gaffney and Claire Lopez, and you'll recognize those two names because they're very involved in security issues and trying to secure America. But I tell you, the obstacles they have to come up against to secure America, and we've already referenced some. The FBI not allowed to protect us. At least that's been the case under the Obama administration, and that goes back even further. If you remember what Phil Haney has shared on this program, it goes all the way back to 2003 with some of those kinds of issues. I'm coming back in just a couple of minutes. Don't go away. Don't touch your dial.
When visiting our website, check out our newsletters, e-news alerts, and news headlines. Those resources are our way of keeping in touch with you. You can join us in helping to maintain this radio outreach on over 830 stations across the USA. Please consider sending a tax-deductible gift in any amount to Olive Tree Ministries, Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota, 55311. Please stay with us. There's more to come from Jan's guest, Trevor Loudon.
Olive Tree Ministries is carrying a new product to help you contend for the faith and understand the times. It is Terry James' new book, Deceivers, Exposing Evil Seducers and Their Last Days Deception. Our generation is characterized by deceiving tactics in the church, the media, the schoolroom, the government, the globalist agenda, and much, much more. I have contributed a chapter in the book talking about the deception that has invaded the church in the last 30 years. Find the book in our web store at olivetreeviews.org, the hardbound 320-page reference book. You can call us to order at 763-559-4444, 763-559-4444. It is also featured in our print and e-newsletter. Sign up online. Don't let the deceivers fool you or those you care about. Many are falling for these deceptions and delusions of our day. Stay in tune and up to date. Order Deceivers today.
In today's world, who do you trust for good insight on current events? For that matter, who do you trust for good Bible commentary? America is full of fake news and false teaching. That's why we want to offer you an alternative to both. We are Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell, and our main objective is to tell you the truth about current events as they relate to a biblical worldview. Join us each week on this station for a source you can trust.
The other thing I'd tell Donald Trump to do is abolish tax-exempt status for the churches.
Okay.
Because that has emasculated the churches around the country. They hide behind that status and will not get involved in political or social issues.
Okay.
So every Christian, if your church won't get involved in political or social issues, find another church real quick.
The enemies within. That's the topic of this edition of Understanding the Times. Here to wrap up today's conversation with documentary producer Trevor Loudon, Jan Markell.
Even the Vital House Intelligence Committee has not escaped penetration.
And the job of the House Intelligence Committee, of course, is to oversee America's most sensitive intelligence programs, how we collect intelligence, how we assess that intelligence, the kinds of operations that we engage in to counter enemies of this country, foreign and, by the way, domestic as well.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Congressman Andre Carson.
Representative Nancy Pelosi, as the senior minority, Democratic member of the House of Representatives now, appointed Representative Andre Carson to, of all things, the Intelligence Committee, the U.S. House of Representatives Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, or sometimes called the HIPS.
Indiana's 7th District Representative Andre Carson has extensive ties to Muslim Brotherhood fronts and operatives.
The Intelligence Committee in the House oversees the FBI's counter-espionage and counter-intelligence operations in this country. These are critical capabilities, and a man who has access to such information, as I have to assume Congressman Carson is now being given such access, and has such ties to the very people, in some cases, that should be the object of that kind of surveillance and counteractivity. It makes for, at a minimum, a security problem.
Representative Carson appears on a frequent basis at conferences sponsored by, held by, CARE, ISNA, ICNA.
Andre Carson has had long-standing ties to organizations and operatives sworn to the destruction of our country.
There are those who are thinking that at this convention right now, we're having secret meetings, that we're plotting to destroy this country. But I say to those who are here undercover, Allah will not allow you to stop us.
And welcome back. Well, I've just played another clip from Enemies Within, DVD I've watched here recently, produced by Trevor Loudon from New Zealand, and find it at enemieswithinmovie.com, enemieswithinmovie.com. And I found that clip I just played to be extremely troubling. Participating in it, you heard Frank Gaffney, you heard Claire Lopez. They've been trying to protect us, as has Phil Haney and a number of others that we talk about or even talk with on this program. Michelle Bachmann is on here frequently, sending out warnings that America is in big trouble because America not only leans left, but America is too cozy with Muslim Brotherhood, etc. Trevor, going back here to this red-green alliance, again, the alliance of communists and Muslims to try to overthrow America. And the clip I just played from your film is so troubling. And Carson ends the little clip, Allah will not allow us to stop. I don't even know what he meant by that, but it sounds very creepy. Can you elaborate on this at all?
Well, look, you got to understand that Andre Carson serves on the Intelligence Committee, which oversees all 16 of your intelligence agencies. The CIA, the FBI, the NSA, you name it, Andre Carson has oversight over them. He's actively involved with the Muslim Brotherhood, and then he says, if you think you can stop us, Allah will not allow you to stop us. Now, what is it you think he means? Basically, the guy is an enemy of the country, yet he is serving on all his powerful bodies. And he's not alone. As I said, there's 100 members of your house who couldn't pass an FBI background check. Several serve on the Intelligence Committee. Several serve on the Homeland Security Committee, like Benny Thompson from Mississippi, who has a long-time connection to Cuba and the Communist Party. And several serve on the Armed Services Committee. And the Education Committee, the Judiciary Committee, etc. So when you join the American military, you take an oath to defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. Your domestic enemies are running crazy people. You know, all the focus is on the foreign enemies, which are bad enough, but which are going to do you more damage in the long term.
Well, you're right. And then we haven't even talked about Huma Abedin, and you spend a good amount of time in your film on Huma Abedin, who she's not got indirect ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. She's got direct ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. She was Hillary Clinton's closest aide. I've had many guests on here talking about this very troubling woman and her ties to Islamicism. Talk to us a little bit about that, because you cover her very effectively in this film.
Yeah, well, we've got to realize that had Hillary Clinton become president, they think that Huma Abedin would have been the Secretary of State.
Mm-hmm.
She would have been your liaison between America and the rest of the world. She has extensive family ties with the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the father of Hamas and Al-Qaeda. And she herself served on the Muslim Students Association. She was also involved with the Journal of Islamic Thought, which was another front for the Muslim Brotherhood, and she was actually on the editorial board of that group. She would have been your Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. She would have been running your foreign affairs, a woman basically working for the opposition. And if you look at someone like Tim Kaine, who was Hillary Clinton's vice president, he was elected by the Muslim Brotherhood to the governorship of Virginia, elected to the Senate by Muslim Brotherhood organizations, and he had an extensive connections to communist movements when he was down in Honduras as a young Catholic layman. So we find this all the time. Many of America's Muslim leaders are actually Marxists, like Linda Sarsour, the famous Linda Sarsour out of New York, recently became a card-carrying member of Democratic Socialists of America. So we have to understand that to confront Islam, we also have to confront the left, because they are allies. And they hate America, they hate Israel, and they are working together over time to destroy President Trump and everything that's good about America. We have to understand the threat is way deeper than most of us realize.
Yes, I would agree, particularly after seeing your production here. Trevor Loudon, if you could spend an hour with President Trump, what would you say to him? And take your time. I really want to hear how you would advise him.
Well, the very first thing he has to do, and he promised to do this but has yet to do it, would be to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Because if he does that, he could shut down all these Muslim Brotherhood, the FBI could shut down all these Muslim Brotherhood front groups right across America. And that would have a huge liberating effect. I would want him to get very urgent about getting the wall put up on the southern border and basically shutting down all immigration to America for the next 5 years. And definitely to shut down Muslim refugee resettlement from the Middle East. That is absolutely vital. That's not just to stop terrorists, that's to basically stop an invasion of people who support Sharia law, which is in direct opposition to the U.S. Constitution. I would also advise him to open up the energy field so America does not have to rely on Saudi or Venezuelan oil. And basically just reinstitute loyalty oaths for all federal government employees, because the federal bureaucracy is absolutely infiltrated by communist and Muslim Brotherhood supporters. And the one thing I would really, really urge him to do is to make sure that Betsy DeVos abolishes the Department of Education, the biggest brainwashing operation in your country. That is absolutely vital.
Have you ever spoken with Betsy DeVos?
No, I haven't. And I understand that they are cutting away some of the Department of Education's power right now, which is good, but they really have to just get rid of the department. America had the best public education in the world for 200 years. It was only under Jimmy Carter that we had a Department of Education which has given the federal government control of education all over the country. And nobody can argue to me that education has improved since. If I was president for one day and I could do one thing, I would abolish the Department of Education. And then I would, for the next day, I would designate the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, and I think those two measures would have a huge impact on America.
I think some listeners right now are thinking, what on earth can I do to make a difference? And one of the things I think that comes out in your film, and effectively so, is, of course, we have to vote. And when so few, even Christians, don't vote year after year, there was an exception, November of 2016. But how would you advise my listeners to come against this terrible issue that you've raised here, this infiltration?
Well, you have to vote, and the other thing I'd tell Donald Trump to do is abolish tax-exempt status for the churches.
Okay.
Because that has emasculated the churches around the country. They hide behind that status and will not get involved in political or social issues.
Okay.
So every Christian, if your church won't get involved in political or social issues, find another church real quick. America depends on the churches. Your churches are the guardians of freedom, and we have to turn the churches around, and our next movie is going to be about the infiltration of the churches and how that can be undone.
Okay. Again, folks, I highly recommend the film. Find it at enemieswithinmovie.com, enemieswithinmovie.com. And it's sobering. And Trevor Loudon has done just a fantastic job laying it out. And it's not that long of a film either. And he's interviewing lots of very, very credible faces and names, and you'll recognize a lot of them. Let me go out of the program just saying this, and that is, when a nation forgets God, there are consequences. And he was the cornerstone of our foundation, but some 50 years ago, leftists decided it was time to throw him out of America, just as Europe expelled God about the same time. And that opens the door for evil, and it opens the door for godless activity. He's been as merciful as possible to America. America remains the leader of freedom around the world, but we have enemies within trying to undo that. America's problems, however, they're really not political. They are spiritual. We cannot make America great again without making America God-honoring again. I want to thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for joining us for today's Understanding the Times Radio with Jan Markell. Across America and across the World Wide Web, we continue to report current events from a biblical perspective. Every weekend, this broadcast comes to you at no cost, but it costs us thousands of dollars. As we produce and distribute this weekly media outreach, would you consider standing with us? With an ever-changing world, men and women of faith need to keep informed. They need to be aware of current events as viewed through the lens of Scripture. Week after week, Jan Markell brings you a compelling hour, pointing out the dangers in today's culture and bringing hope through faith in Jesus Christ. We're asking you to join us in this listener-supported ministry as our financial partner. Please write with your tax-deductible gifts to Olive Tree Ministries, Box 1452, Maple Grove, Minnesota, 55311. Contributions are also accepted at olivetreeviews.org or by phone when you dial 763-559-4444. Don't forget, global updates with a biblical worldview are yours around the clock at olivetreeviews.org. We look forward to hearing from you soon. We appreciate your continued prayer support for Jan and her media team. Jan Markell returns next week with another information and inspiration-packed hour designed to help you understand the times.